Lovely to see you. I do want to wish a happy anniversary to Joe and Spence. Thank you for being here today. Very special 34 years. That's longer than some people have been alive. So we're continuing with the CSL theme for the year, which is Rising Higher, Growing Deeper. This month's theme is Transcendent Purpose. And we started this month with a series of lesson that defined our terms. Transcendent meaning beyond the usual in a superlative manner, and purpose meaning a goal, an outcome, or an intention. The question posed to us in the first week was, what's the point anyway? Ultimately, what we came to was that life, our purpose, was our unique opportunity to grow in understanding of ourselves and our relationship to our source, God, Spirit, Infinite Mind. And then to bring that uniqueness, which each of us is, into the world in the way only we could do. Last week, our speaker, Margot Hennenkamp, spoke on the purpose that surpasses all. She shared with us how purpose in the individual shows up as a passion for a specific activity, a hobby, or a pursuit. That each of us has a unique part in the play of the grand plan of the universe. Further, the tapestry of the universe would be absolutely incomplete without the uniqueness that is each of us. As an example, Margot shared the inspirational story of Bessie Coleman, a woman who became the first Black woman internationally to become licensed to fly. Bessie also intended to learn and to grow. That was her intention at an early age. And she ultimately became a role model for generations of women, Black women, to come, showing that you can far exceed your expectations or limitations when you set your intention. Today's lesson, as Debbie mentioned, is elevation of awareness. The marketing teaser for today's lesson is provided by CSL, gave us this overview of the topic. Living a spiritual life is like being on an elevator to expand our awareness. Through life's many experiences, whether up, down, or standing still, we grow and expand our understanding of truth principles. Our awareness grows regardless. What matters most is how we choose to act on it. My mind immediately wondered at the definition of awareness, so we'll start today's lesson with some clarification there. Then, starting with the premise that inherent in our being is that urge, the pull to expand and deepen our awareness, our connection with Spirit, we consider the path that leads us to an elevation of awareness. As we move along the path of our spiritual awakening and growth, we frequently set off committed to one single direction or way of being and learning. But as we elevate in awareness, we oftentimes find we are called in a completely different direction. And that's absolutely perfect. As we move, as we more and more align with the guidance from within, we start to pay better attention and accept insight, seeds for future growth, and deepening understanding, all in support of our transcendent purpose. And once on this path, we truly come to understand what practicing the presence means in our day-to-day activities. As students of the science of mind, we early on become familiar with the word consciousness. Remember? has a whole different meaning sometimes in this teaching. The definition of consciousness from the Science of Mind glossary starts with the phrase mental awareness. Wanting further clarification, I turn to our Google friend AI. Don't like it, but I use it all the time. And ask for the distinction between consciousness and awareness. This is what AI shared with me. You can be conscious or in a waking state without being particularly aware of anything specific, like during a daydream or when your mind is wandering. However, you must be conscious to be aware of something, because awareness requires the presence of conscious state to focus on. And then it provided this analogy. Consciousness is like a vast, dark room. Awareness is like the light that you can direct to illuminate specific parts of that room. Get it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So right now in this space, you are conscious. But within that consciousness, you might also be aware that the temperature in the room is either too warm or too cold, depending on who you are, for your personal comfort. The seat you're sitting on may be too soft or too hard. The person sitting next to you may not have had breakfast because you hear their stomach growling. And there's a ticking clock somewhere in the room. Those are your levels of awareness. So awareness then is noticing and paying attention to what is happening in the space around you. It may mean being aware of the energy in the room. Is it intent on the speaker or is it bored? Noticing tension in people around you. Are they listening or are they tensing, as if in disagreement to what's being said? Notice the expression of others' faces and their body language. That's awareness. And being aware of occurrences in the world or workplace and how they affect you and your coworkers. That's awareness. Elevating our awareness in this context actually is paying attention to the presence of spirit everywhere we go and in everything we interact with. The notes from CSL for today's lesson included a reading from Dr. Donald L. Morgan's book, Guidance for a Spiritual Journey. I'm not familiar with his work, but he is a doctor of religious science. I'm going to go look him up. Dr. Morgan wrote this: "It is encouraging to realize that our very nature is such as to keep us growing, and also to provide the instrument through which that growth is accomplished. We have a physical body, a complete emotional nature, a complex emotional nature, and an intellect. These three phases of our nature are so closely interrelated and they react so definitely upon each other that we have a triple set of capacities to be utilized in this process of advancement. There is something within us which constantly pushes us forward, which demands continued progress. Inertia may hinder our paying much attention to this inner urge, but it's always there. It is what we are, demanding expression. Made in the image and likeness of the Father, we cannot accept stagnation. We protest against it. Spiritual realization is an unfoldment eminently deeper than intellectual accomplishment." Let me read that. That really rang my bell. Spiritual realization is an unfoldment eminently deeper than intellectual accomplishment. It is such a unifying of self with the Father that we are conscious of an all-satisfying oneness. We may not be able to put it into words. It is inarticulate, but nevertheless so real that no one who experiences it can ever dispute it. It is what all people have forever sought because it is the inherent nature of humans. And I'll add, it's the way we're made. Incredibly sensitive instruments once we are awake and aware. Many of us here today came into this teaching having already established a background or platform in another teaching, perhaps another philosophy, or maybe even another religion. Those teachings or institutions provided us with a structure, a way of seeing, believing, and practicing a faith. For more than a few of us, that path was determined for us by parents, even maybe by teachers. But somewhere along the path, something shifted, or was revealed, or came into our awareness that there was a different way of being, of seeing ourselves, our journey, and our relationship with God or Spirit. As a result of that revelation, we paused, then stopped to listen, and then followed that guidance from within that moved us to listen more. And as we listened and began to shift our perspective, we were drawn to actually study and then to practice a new way of being in relationship with God. That deepening relationship allows us to pay better attention to those urgings from within us, to that still small voice that comes in the silence or solitude, sounding perhaps like one's own voice, but speaking with wisdom, love, and compassion we haven't known before, and in which we can truly, completely trust. What comes to me is that there really isn't any mistakes along the spiritual path. That absolutely everything we learned or experienced contributed to the development of our awareness of life and spirit and our relationship with God. Initially, we were guided by tradition, perhaps, or parental direction, but that path, though perhaps now looking extraordinarily narrow, set us moving forward on a broader, personally chosen spiritual path and the fulfillment of our purpose in life. And looking back now, perhaps we can appreciate the consistency of the movement forward in our spiritual growth and awareness. As we deepen our practice of the presence of Spirit in our lives and develop a willingness to listen and act, the urgings, the little nudges, the ideas come to us more easily. And when we have developed that awareness to those urgings as little nudges from God, or call them seeds of ideas, those ideas, when we pay attention, begin to grow and to bear fruit. Maybe you've had an urge to contact someone you haven't heard from in a long time, just to say hello. When we act on that type of urge, it is like watering a seed. If we act on the urge and make the call, we may not see any difference. But each time we respond to that kind of urge, our awareness grows, and we become more sensitive to the guidance from within. Sometimes the guidance may be to act, and at other times it may be to pause, to stop what we're doing and let the silence reveal to us what it wants us to know. What I have learned is it could be that I've forgotten something as I walked out the door and sense that I need to stop for a moment and consider that urge, that feeling before I jump in the car and head off to my destination. Can't tell you how many times I've had that experience. Darn, why didn't I listen? That urge is always right. And I have learned to listen and to be grateful for it. And if God's Spirit is there for us in the most mundane things, like I forgot my wetty wet wet for work today, think what it can do for us, through us, in fulfilling our transcendent purpose when we are aware and we listen. So we've outlined a number of the possible benefits of elevating our awareness, particularly as it pertains to transcendent purpose. But what's the process to get us there, you ask? You don't, but I'm going to tell you. As with any skill or habit that we want to get better at, we need to actually practice. And if you've been with me for a while, you know one of my mantras is, do your spiritual practices. Okay? Spiritual practices. Activities like daily meditation, daily prayers, daily reading of materials designed to feed you at a spiritual level or lead you into a deeper contemplation of you, the truth of your nature, and your relationship with the whole. As with physical exercise or playing the instrument, time spent daily creates muscle memory. Or, in the case of spiritual practice, spiritual muscle memory that we can rely on when things get really dicey. Having a routine that makes time for spiritual practices puts spirit's significance and importance at center stage of our lives before anything else. Practicing presence, as I mentioned early in our talk, includes those daily practices, but could be so much more if we chose. Members of the Catholic tradition point to the writing and practices of a 16th century individual by the name of Brother Lawrence. When they're referencing practicing the presence, he wrote several letters that are reference his practices. He was not actually a monk. He lived in a monastery, a small monastery in France. He was raised as an evangelical Protestant, but as he matured, he began to question the information he was given. He converted to the Catholic Church and went to live in this monastery in France, where he worked in the kitchen as a cook and a dishwasher. In a series of letters that he wrote to various parties within the Catholic bodies, he wrote of a relationship with God as one of continuous interaction. Brother Lawrence's practice involved turning mundane tasks into acts of devotion, lifting his heart to God in a continuous, intimate relationship rather than focusing on elaborate forms of worship. Brother Lawrence saw no distinction between sacred and secular time, as all his daily activities, even cooking or washing dishes, could be opportunities to engage with God through love. Sounds a lot like the practice of seva, selfless service offered to God. His prayers were characterized by simplicity and focus on love, believing that love, not mere knowledge or grand gestures, was the essential element to relating to God. The central idea was to maintain a conscious awareness of God's presence at all times. This was achieved through constant, simple attention and an inward, secret conversation with God, what we would call practicing the presence. In tasks like preparing an omelet, he would perform the action for the love of God and then prostrate himself in adoration, giving thanks for the grace to serve. That might be startling to my housemaid, but just think about what that would mean. Thank you, God, for letting me have the chance to make this food to nourish us. Wow. His prayers often included requests for the grace to remain in God's presence and to have the strength to carry out his duties, even ordinary ones like lifting bales of hay and straw. And by entrusting all his work to God and acting out of love for him, Brother Lawrence found deep contentment and satisfaction, becoming more content than a king. So the question is, imagine what life might be for us if absolutely everything we did as an offering to God. Imagine what life might be if every imagined conversation in our heads was a conversation with God. Imagine how we might shift our perspective if we repeatedly came back to that place where we practice the presence, God and only God. Imagine what life might be if we turned our awareness and our perspective to see only God in everything and everywhere. That would be really practicing your presence. It would be a very interesting experiment to try. So, running short today, but to wrap up, we have within us the divine spark, the energy, the urge to fulfill up a purpose here and then some. That's that transcendent purpose that is our focus for this month. The reality is, we don't have to be living in a monastery to develop that level of awareness. But if that is where we would like to go, to be that aligned with Spirit, to listen to and to feel that level of guidance, then practicing the presence every moment, every day, or setting the intention to do so is where we would start. Or realistically, maybe it's the willingness to consider making an intention to practice the presence. Just the willingness to think about it might be enough. So whichever is right for you, we can take it into prayer and know that the right and perfect action for each of us is now at hand. So please join me. Beloved, we recognize that you are all, absolutely everything. And as we align with that idea, we open our awareness to the truth that every person, that everything, every animal, every aspect of creation is your nature taken form. And so we stop for a moment to entertain the idea of practicing the presence, that you are there in absolutely everything. That the conversations we have with salespeople, the interactions we have in business, the discussions we have with family and friends, we're actually having that conversation directly with you. That the things that we do, the tasks we perform, the scrubbing the floor, the cleaning the sink, the washing the dishes, the making the food, are all acts of adoration and honor to that infinite intelligence and principle that is life itself. This morning we pause to consider how life might be if we chose to entertain that way of thinking, seeing, and being. To embrace it moment by moment, to remember, forget, as we in our humanity tend to do. And yet understand that there is always divine guidance, wisdom, and love that supports us as we move along this path. And by intending to do so, we elicit the support of an infinite universe to recognize presence everywhere we go. Thank you, beloved, for this time, for this lesson, for this unfolding of an idea, a seed planted. May each of us water the seed appropriately and grow what is absolutely perfect in our lives. Thank you. We accept, we honor, we let be, and so it is.